Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. You know, we love to take a deep dive into all sorts of fascinating sources.
We do.
And this one comes straight from you guys. We got a bunch of requests to really get into Surah Al-Ahzab.
The 33rd chapter of the Quran.
Yes, exactly, the 33rd chapter of the Quran. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. And it's a pretty substantial surah. It was revealed in Medina
Yeah.
during a really pivotal time for that early Muslim community. I think a lot of people, when they hear Al-Ahzab, they immediately think of
The Battle of the Confederates.
the Battle of the Confederates, yeah, which is kind of where the name comes from.
Right, where all those different Arab tribes kind of united against the Muslims.
Yeah.
It was a very significant historical moment.
Absolutely. And, I think sometimes people get put off when they hear, okay, this is from a very specific historical context.
Yep.
But what I think is so amazing about the Quran in general, and this surah in particular, is how it addresses these really broad,
Profound questions.
yeah, profound questions about how we should live our lives, ethically, spiritually. It's incredible how much timeless wisdom is packed into these verses.
And that's exactly what we want to do today. Unpack that wisdom, so to speak.
Exactly. Really try to extract those key life lessons and moral guidance that still speak to us today.
And hopefully make it relevant to our modern lives.
Exactly. And we're going to be doing that by looking really closely at the verses themselves.
Right.
And drawing on some scholarly interpretations to help us understand some of the deeper meanings and context.
It's going to be a really interesting deep dive, I think.
I think so too. Okay, so the surah opens with this very powerful instruction to the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Okay.
And it basically says, be mindful of Allah and don't follow the disbelievers and the hypocrites. Right off the bat, it's setting the tone. What do you think?
I think it's immediately establishing that our primary guidance should be coming from the divine.
Right.
Not from those who are rejecting faith or acting in a hypocritical way.
Right. And it's not just saying like, hey, think about God every once in a while. It's really emphasizing this deep, mindful awareness of Allah, like knowing that he's always present and aware of our actions. That's a powerful concept.
Absolutely. And I think naturally from that flows this idea of tawakkul.
Trust in Allah.
Yes, trust in Allah. It's like once you've established that mindfulness of Allah and you're committed to following his guidance, then placing your trust in him becomes so much easier.
It's like setting your compass. You know you have your direction, and then you just trust that you're on the right path. So powerful.
And then it gets into some really specific situations and rulings. For example, it addresses and invalidates certain pre-Islamic customs that were prevalent at the time, like zihar, for instance.
Zihar. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, zihar was this form of divorce where a husband would essentially compare his wife to his mother, which was like a huge insult.
Yeah, it was a way of like degrading the wife and trying to end the marriage without actually going through the proper process of divorce. So the surah makes it very clear that this practice is no longer acceptable.
Which is really interesting because it shows how Islam was coming in and reforming these harmful practices.
Exactly. It was about establishing justice and fairness in all aspects of life, including family relations.
And then there's the part about adopted sons not having the same legal status as biological sons, which I know can be kind of a tricky concept for some people.
Yeah. But it's important to understand the historical context and the reasoning behind it. Inheritance laws were a big deal back then, and this clarification was meant to prevent confusion and ensure that people's rights were protected.
And it's not saying that adopted children should be treated any differently in terms of love and care.
Of course not. In fact, the surah emphasizes the importance of treating all children with kindness and compassion. And it even gives instructions on how to address adopted children. It says that they should be called by their known biological father's names if possible.
Which I think is really interesting. It emphasizes truthfulness and transparency in lineage, even if it means changing established social norms.
And if the biological father is unknown,
then they're considered brothers and sisters in faith.
Exactly. Highlighting those important community bonds that exist within the Muslim community. So you see how it's all about creating a just and equitable society where everyone's rights and relationships are clearly defined.
Absolutely. And then we get to this very significant verse about the prophet and his wives.
Yes, verse 6,
Ugh.
where it describes the prophet, peace be upon him, as being more worthy of believers' consideration than their own selves.
That's a powerful statement.
It is. And then it refers to his wives as the mothers of the believers.
Which is a huge honor.
It signifies immense respect and reverence, elevating their position within the community.
It also touches upon the importance of maintaining strong blood ties. but at the same time, it recognizes the importance of kindness towards allies and companions.
It's about balancing those different relationships and obligations.
Okay, so this is where it gets really insightful for me. Verse 21 presents the prophet as the excellent pattern of conduct,
Especially for those seeking Allah and the hereafter.
especially when facing difficult trials and tribulations.
Like the Battle of Ahzab.
Exactly.
His life becomes the practical demonstration of how to live by the Quran's teachings.
And then we have verse 35, which is so impactful
Yes, it lists a whole range of virtuous qualities.
for both believing men and women.
And emphasizes the equal reward for embodying those qualities.
Exactly. It's not saying, okay, men should be like this and women should be like that. It's saying these are the qualities that all believers should strive for.
And it lists so many important ones, like being Muslim, believing obedient, truthful, patient, humble, charitable fasting, guarding one's chastity, and frequently remembering Allah.
It's a pretty comprehensive list. It covers so many different aspects of our lives.
And the reward.
Forgiveness and a great reward. It's a beautiful promise, and it applies to everyone who makes that sincere effort to cultivate those virtues. And then finally, we encounter this profound concept of the trust, the amana.
In verse 72.
And this is where things get really deep. So the trust is this immense responsibility.
It encompasses faith, moral obligation, and our free will.
And it was offered to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they all declined it.
Out of fear and apprehension. They knew they weren't capable of handling such a burden.
But humankind.
We took it on.
And the verse describes us as being unjust and ignorant for doing so. Which is kind of a paradox, isn't it? Like we're being given this incredible gift, this amazing potential.
But we're also being told that we're not really equipped to handle it.
It's like we have this capacity for both great good and great harm. And it's up to us to choose which path we're going to take.
It's a huge responsibility, but it also speaks to the immense potential that we possess. So what does all of this mean for our listeners today?
Well, I think the main takeaway from Surah Al-Ahzab is that despite being rooted in a specific historical context, it provides us with these incredibly relevant insights into faith ethics and how to navigate the challenges of life.
It really all boils down to placing our trust in Allah, looking to the Prophet as our ultimate guide, and striving for virtuous conduct in all areas of our lives.
It's a holistic approach to living a life of purpose and meaning.
And I think it leaves us with this very important question.
A question for all of our listeners to ponder. Recognizing the weight of this trust that we've undertaken, what is one specific area in your life where you can more consciously strive to fulfill that responsibility? Where can you dedicate yourself more fully to righteousness?
It's a powerful question, and I think it's one that deserves some serious reflection. So we encourage you to take some time with this, revisit Surah Al-Ahzab, and really explore its profound wisdom.
It has so much to offer. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.